And the fact that it's found in the water, downriver, yeah, it's just strange. It's strange. So we're organizing a search for Jack and Lily Sullivan. We are relying on community members to come and join those efforts. We're going to offer like a little bit of shooting from the hip training on walking along looking for evidence. We've had about 40 people volunteer, but overnight you've had...
Just now, the RCMP has finally confirmed 2 major updates in the Lilly and Jack case, and these changes are already reshaping how investigators move forward. For months, this investigation felt trapped in silence, but the RCMP has now spoken clearly, officially, and on the record. And what they confirmed isn't speculation, it isn't rumor. It's real, it's recent, and it changes the direction of this entire search. Stay with me, because the second confirmation is the one people have been waiting for the longest. Before we get into the new confirmations, here's the fast breakdown. Lilly and Jack Sullivan disappeared earlier this year, sparking an enormous response that quickly became one of the most intense community-driven and RCMP-supported searches Nova Scotia has witnessed in years. From the moment the alert went out, volunteers poured in from surrounding towns, neighboring provinces, and even from across the border, forming search grids that stretched through dense forests, open fields, steep embankments, and miles of riverbank. These weren't casual walkthroughs. People crawled through brush, scanned thick undergrowth, marked trails, and coordinated with mapping teams to ensure nothing was missed. At the same time, drones buzzed overhead, thermal imaging units swept large terrains, and trained dogs joined the effort, covering as much ground as humanly possible. As the search expanded, volunteers began discovering various objects scattered near pathways, wooded pockets, and river edges. These items, bits of clothing, scraps of fabric, small personal objects, instantly ignited waves of speculation online. Social media became a storm of theories, assumptions, and attempts to match found items with old family photos or early descriptions. For many, it felt like these discoveries might finally be the cracks forming in a case that had been painfully silent for months. Meanwhile, investigators worked quietly in the background. RCMP teams conducted interviews with neighbors, family members, hikers, drivers, and anyone who might have seen or heard something. They sifted through hours of surveillance footage, reviewed cell phone data, examined vehicle logs, and cross-checked timelines again and again. Yet through all of this, the RCMP rarely spoke publicly. Instead, they released only careful, measured statements, nothing more than what was necessary. No dramatic announcements, no speculation, no emotional promises. Just facts, and only when those facts were solid. But that long stretch of silence shifted today. For the first time in weeks, the RCMP has provided 2 clear, definitive confirmations, statements strong enough to cut straight through confusion, the rumors, and the noise surrounding the case. And these confirmations don't just update the public. They redefine the direction of the investigation moving forward. The RCMP has officially confirmed that the investigation into the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan remains active, open, and fully ongoing. And while that may sound like a simple procedural update, it directly challenges weeks of online speculation claiming the case had gone cold, abandoned, or quietly shelved. The new statement makes it clear those rumors were completely false. Investigators have not stepped back, slowed down, or closed the file in any capacity. In fact, the wording of the update suggests the opposite. Work is still happening behind the scenes, and it's happening consistently. The RCMP emphasized that they are still gathering information, indicating that leads are still coming in from the public, from volunteer teams, and from ongoing field checks in areas around Lansdowne Station. They also confirmed they are still analyzing evidence, which implies that items previously collected, even those the RCMP described as not relevant, are still going through internal review processes. Digital forensics, environmental testing, and data verification take time, and this confirmation suggests those processes are very much underway. Even more importantly, the statement noted that investigators are still executing follow-ups. That includes re-interviewing certain individuals, checking timelines for inconsistencies, validating new claims sent in by residents, and revisiting locations when something changes, such as shifting water levels, new ground disturbances, or updates from volunteer search teams. This ongoing verification work is a strong sign that the RCMP does not consider the case dormant. And finally, they stress that they are still appealing for tips from the public. This alone tells us that investigators believe someone out there may know something, even unintentionally, and that one small detail could shift the entire investigation. Put together, this statement reveals something important. The RCMP has not closed the door on new discoveries. They're still engaged, still active, and still moving, because they believe movement is still possible in this case. The RCMP's second confirmation is not just another update. It's a major reset to the narrative that's been building for weeks. According to investigators, every item recently discovered by volunteer searchers, the bits of clothing, the scraps of fabric, the small objects lifted from riverbanks, muddy clearings, and dense wooded pockets, has been fully examined and officially ruled out. None of it belonged to Lilly. None of it belonged to Jack. And none of it played any role in their disappearance. This is a decisive statement, one that cuts directly through the waves of theories and debates that surged online the moment those items were found. For many people following the case, those volunteer discoveries felt like the first real signs of hope in a long time. Photos circulated. Comment sections erupted. Some believed the T-shirt could match something from an earlier family photo. Others thought the blanket found between river driftwood must have been connected. Even the smaller objects, the ones volunteers described as childlike or personal, were picked apart and discussed as if they were near certain leads. The case had been painfully quiet, and suddenly people felt like the puzzle pieces were starting to move again. But the RCMP's confirmation ends that entire branch of speculation. Investigators reviewed the materials, cross-referenced them, and determined definitively that those objects have no connection to the Sullivan children. And while that may feel disappointing or even frustrating to some who hope the discoveries marked a turning point, this clarification actually tells us something important about the direction of the investigation. If the RCMP is confident enough to publicly dismiss these items, then they must have clearer, stronger internal criteria guiding their focus. It suggests they're not chasing every loose thread. They're concentrating on something more targeted, something that aligns with the timeline, the environment, or the remaining unexplored leads. In other words, ruling out those items doesn't shut the investigation down. It sharpens it. It means investigators are now directing their attention toward a more specific location, pattern, or individual, and they don't want public attention drifting toward dead ends. When you line up both confirmations side by side, the message becomes unmistakably clear. The RCMP is not drifting, not stepping back, and definitely not allowing the investigation to be guided by public speculation or misleading clues. Instead, what they're showing is a level of focus that the public hasn't fully seen until now. By confirming that the case is still active and that the recent volunteer-found items are unrelated, investigators are essentially drawing a clean line between noise and strategy. And that line matters, because it tells us exactly how the RCMP is positioning itself behind the scenes. Steady, deliberate, and zeroed in on leads that actually hold weight. This combination of confirmations reveals that the search is no longer broad or exploratory the way it was in the early days. It's not about checking every trail, revisiting every clearing, or responding to every rumor. Instead, investigators are moving with intention, building a timeline piece by piece, reconstructing digital behavior, and re-examining small environmental indicators that could point toward the children's movements. Every interview they conduct now has a purpose. Every digital trace they review is being checked against known timestamps. Every drone sweep or shoreline pass is chosen because it corresponds to something they've already logged. They're also analyzing surveillance footage from highway cams, private properties, and rural byroad intersections, not with the hope of stumbling onto something new, but with the aim of confirming or disproving very specific possibilities. This shift from wide net searching to targeted rechecking is the strongest sign, yet that investigators believe answers are still available, and that they lie not in random discoveries, but in the fine details that align with the established timeline. The RCMP's focus stance also hints at confidence. Confidence that the core of the case is still solvable, confidence that something meaningful remains undiscovered, and confidence that the direction they're working in is the right one. They wouldn't continue deploying resources, revisiting digital threads, or refining search zones unless they believed there were still pieces of truth scattered somewhere in the margins. So taken together, these confirmations deliver one powerful message. The investigation isn't drifting, it's tightening. The work isn't slowing, it's sharpening. And the RCMP believes there are still answers waiting to be found. So now the big question becomes, if the investigation is active, if unrelated items have been ruled out, and if RCMP analysts are still reviewing evidence behind the scenes, what are investigators focusing on next? Because sources close to the case say the next major update could come the moment digital and forensic analyses finish. And that could be the breakthrough the public has been waiting for. I'll keep tracking every confirmed update the moment it drops. Stay tuned. The next RCMP statement may be the most important one yet.